Welcome back, everyone, to the Mad Genius Thesis.
Glad to be here.
Each week we kind of dig into this whole idea.
Yeah.
Is there, some connection between creativity and mental illness?
The age-old question, right?
Right. And today we are tackling someone who I think a lot of our listeners are going to be pretty excited to hear us talk about.
For sure.
Tupac Shakur.
Yeah.
His story, man, it's captivating, but it's also tragic, right?
It is. It's tragic. It's captivating. It's all the things. And I think it's a really important case study in this whole conversation because even when he was young, like 17, he was driven.
Really?
I mean, imagine quitting your pizza delivery job.
Oh, come on.
In the middle of a rush.
In the middle of a rush?
Yeah, because your manager wouldn't give you time off.
Wait, seriously. Pizza delivery is one thing, but to walk out during the dinner rush, that takes some serious,
Right.
guts.
Guts.
What's so important?
He had an audition.
Oh, okay.
At the Apollo Theater.
At the Apollo. Okay, this isn't like a high school drama club thing.
No.
We're talking the Apollo. Wow.
Right. It really just speaks to his belief in himself and his artistry.
Yeah.
It wasn't just some teenage, rebellion. This was like deep, passion.
So we see this drive early on.
Yeah.
What shaped him?
Well, to understand Tupac, you got to understand his roots.
Okay.
Born into a world of activism, his mother, Afeni Shakur, was a prominent member of the Black Panther Party.
Wow.
So at a young age, he's exposed to this fight against oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that woven throughout his music.
Yeah. So it's inherently political.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But his childhood wasn't all, revolutionary ideals.
Right.
Afeni also struggled with drug addiction,
Right.
and that created a lot of instability for Tupac and his sister, Sekiwa. There's stories of him having to step up, care for his younger sister,
Wow.
and navigate, a difficult home life.
How resilient do you have to be to go through that?
I know.
At such a young age.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And amidst this, really turbulent backdrop, his artistic talent starts to flourish.
Okay.
So he's drawn to acting. He even performs in A Raisin in the Sun at the Apollo Theater.
Wait a minute. That's the same stage where he walked out on the pizza job.
I know, right?
Wow.
Full circle.
So it's like a symbol.
It is a symbol of his aspirations.
Yeah. So clearly talented. But how was he with, formal education?
He had a very complex relationship with education.
Okay.
He dropped out of high school, but he never stopped learning. He was a voracious reader.
Oh, wow.
Deeply intellectual, loved Shakespearean sonnets, just devoured literature.
Wow.
He believed in a different kind of education, one that connected to real life experiences,
Yeah.
and that empowered individuals.
It's like he saw the flaws and he's like, I'm going to go learn on my own.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where Layla Steinberg comes in.
Okay.
A writer, an activist, a mentor. She became this guiding force in his life.
Okay.
And their first meeting was at a club, but then they reconnected in a park where Steinberg was reading Winnie Mandela's Lining. A part of my soul went with him, which is in the anthology, the autobiography of Winnie Mandela. And she recognized his writing talent and really nurtured it.
So it's serendipitous, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. This meeting of the minds.
Meeting of the minds.
So all this is happening, and then we see this other side of Tupac emerge.
Yes.
Thug life.
The thug life philosophy.
Now, that's a phrase that I've always been kind of like,
right.
What did that mean to him?
So thug life was more than just a phrase.
Okay.
It was a reflection of the societal injustices he saw around him.
Okay.
Remember, he grew up experiencing poverty, racism, police brutality. It was his way to give voice to that pain and frustration.
So it was from his lived experience.
Exactly. So he took a word that was often used to demonize young Black men, and he redefined it.
Oh, interesting.
Owned it.
Yeah.
On his own terms. And he even created an acronym for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The hate you give little infants fucks everybody.
Wow.
Highlighting the cyclical nature of violence and oppression.
It's so powerful. He's not just saying there's a problem. He's like, this is the root of the problem.
Exactly. That's what made his voice so compelling. He was able to articulate these complex issues.
Yeah.
But there's also a complexity to Tupac we can't ignore.
Okay.
And that's some of his views, particularly on women, were very controversial.
Right. Because, some of those lyrics,
Yeah.
Pretty misogynistic.
Definitely.
And so, for someone who is so for the oppressed,
Right.
how does that work?
To understand this, I think we have to look at, the larger context of hip-hop culture at the time.
Okay.
The early 90s.
So it's not just him, it's like the cultural forces too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to his concept of the bitch-hoe nexus.
Now that's a phrase we need to unpack.
It is.
What did he mean?
So for Tupac, it was this dichotomy
Okay.
that he saw in women.
Okay.
He believed that women were either like bitches
Okay.
who sought to like control men, or hoes who were promiscuous
Okay.
and lacked morals.
Okay. Now, obviously, I can see where that would be
Problematic.
problematic, right?
Yeah.
Because you're reducing people down to stereotypes.
It's a binary. Right.
Right.
It's this harmful, simplistic binary.
Right.
And it's perplexing because he had like deep and meaningful relationships
Yeah.
with women in his life.
Right, like Jada Pinkett Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile that belief
Yeah.
with those personal experiences? To understand that further, I think we have to examine those pressures and expectations he faced as a young Black man in the public eye.
Yeah, it's like these conflicting ideas, right?
Right.
He's got these deep connections with women, but then...
Yeah, but remember, this is the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Hip-hop is exploding, and this image of the, like, gangster rapper
Right.
is, like, taking hold.
Right, right.
And so there was this pressure
Yeah.
to conform to this, like, hyper-masculine.
So you're a Black man in this space.
Yes.
And you've got to be this certain...
Wait.
Yeah.
In this way.
And it's almost like that's not necessarily who he was all the time.
Well, right.
Yeah.
You know, we know he was sensitive and intellectual,
Yeah.
drawn to poetry and acting, deeply affected by social injustice,
Yeah.
but then also had this need to project this image of, like, strength
Yeah.
and toughness.
It's almost like...
It's a paradox.
It makes me think of Mike Tyson.
Oh, that's such a good comparison.
Right.
Yes.
Because here's another incredibly talented
Yeah.
Black man who's dealing with this public image.
Yes. Fame. Internal turmoil.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's like
yeah.
they're both these powerful figures
Mhm.
who are under this immense scrutiny
Right.
and trying to figure out like how to navigate,
Yeah.
you know, their identities, their vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And in a world that, you know, often misinterprets and misrepresents Black men.
Yeah, it's like this double bind almost.
It is a double bind.
You know, they want to be authentic, but then they're pressured into this.
To play a role
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily align.
Yeah, and they were criticized,
Yes.
you know, for perpetuating negative stereotypes
Even though...
when they're these complex
Right.
individuals.
So talented.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very
So gross.
a very tightrope.
Yeah, so it's like even when you challenge the status quo,
Yes.
you can still fall into these.
You can still reinforce those narratives.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears just a little bit here.
Okay.
We've got to talk about substance abuse.
Yes.
You know,
It's a sensitive topic.
but I think it's crucial to understanding him, right?
It is.
And we know from accounts of his friends.
Jada Pinkett Smith.
Hmm.
He struggled with alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think, was there a connection between the substance abuse and some of his maybe like more volatile
I mean, it's possible.
behavior?
Right. It definitely could have played a role.
Yeah.
And it, you know, also makes you think, like, did it contribute to his
Yeah.
tragic end?
This tragic end.
You know, what's interesting, though, is, you know, according to his early publicist, Karen Lee,
Okay.
Tupac had actually stopped using drugs and alcohol while he was in prison.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Apparently, he was thinking more clearly. He was even, like, setting goals for himself.
Oh, wow.
Like, wanted to write scripts.
It's like he had a new clarity.
Yes, yes.
And it makes you wonder, had he gotten help, you
Yeah,
know?
very right resource.
Yeah, could it have been different?
Right. Could he have overcome his demons?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new chapter. But I'll never know.
But it adds another layer to the tragedy.
It does. It absolutely does. But even while battling these inner demons, he really sought to control his narrative, you know? And one of the ways he did that was with his tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
His tattoos were a very powerful form of self-expression. Like he was using his body as a canvas.
Right. I mean, he's famous for those tattoos.
Yeah.
Especially that thug life across his stomach.
Iconic.
Yeah. What did these symbols, what did they mean to him?
They were more than just aesthetics.
Okay.
It was his way to tell his story. to display his beliefs and affiliations.
Okay.
So, for example, the Thug Life tattoo represented his commitment to overcoming adversity,
Okay.
his loyalty to his community, his defiance of societal norms.
Well,
It was this bold declaration of his identity.
yeah.
And it's especially poignant when we
Yeah.
think about the circumstances of his death.
His death, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he died so young.
Way too young.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a shock to the world.
Yeah. Can you remind us about that night in Vegas?
So it was September 1996. He's in Vegas
Okay.
with his entourage, which included Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records.
Okay.
They had attended a Mike Tyson fight.
Wait a minute. A Mike Tyson fight?
I know.
We were just talking about.
Their lives were like
Their lives are intertwined.
intertwined in this like tragic way.
Yeah.
But anyway, as they were leaving the fight,
Okay.
they were stopped at a red light
Okay.
when another car pulled up alongside them and opened fire.
God, it's a story that's been told so many times, but it's still so
Surreal.
surreal. Yeah.
Tupac was hit multiple times,
Mm.
rushed to the hospital,
Yeah.
but died 6 days later.
A loss
Huge loss.
of such a brilliant artist.
A complex human being.
And it's interesting how his death almost mythologized him.
Right.
All those conspiracy theories.
I know.
Some people think he's still alive.
I know.
It's like, why does he still hold this power?
I think people struggled and still struggle to accept his loss.
Yeah.
It's almost like they need to believe that he's still out there
Yeah.
creating and challenging the world.
He was larger than life.
He was.
I mean, he left a mark.
Indelible mark on music and culture.
To this day, people are analyzing his work,
Absolutely.
debating his legacy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He was more than just a rapper. He was
Yeah.
a poet, an activist, a voice for the voiceless.
But, coming back to like the theme of our show,
Yes.
what can we learn from Tupac's life about this link between creativity and mental illness?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, was his genius a product of his struggles?
Right.
Or did they, tragically cut short a life full of potential?
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But there's no denying that his life was marked by intense emotions, a deep empathy for suffering, and a relentless pursuit of truth and justice.
Yeah.
And those qualities, I think, fueled his creativity.
Mm.
It gave his music that raw, visceral power.
Yeah. You can hear the pain, the anger, the longing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like he was channeling the collective trauma of a generation. He was able to give voice to that experience.
And yet there's that like recklessness,
Right.
that self-destructive streak that ultimately,
Yeah.
led to his downfall. And it's hard not to, I don't know, feel like his life was a tragedy,
Yeah.
like a potential
An unfulfilled potential.
fulfilled. Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, what if things had been different?
Right.
If he had gotten the help,
The help that he needed.
the resources, if he had found a way to channel those demons into something
Positive.
more positive,
Yeah.
more constructive.
We can only speculate.
We can only speculate.
But even in that short life,
Mhm.
he left a mark.
He did. He lived life on his own terms.
Yeah.
He was a rebel. He was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
And he refused to compromise his vision. And I think that's what made him so compelling.
Right.
So influential.
It's that uncompromising spirit that people are still drawn to
Absolutely.
decades later.
His work still feels relevant,
Yeah.
thought-provoking.
Yeah. And that's a testament to
His genius.
To his genius, right.
I mean, he forced us to confront these uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about ourselves, about society.
About the nature of creativity.
The nature of creativity, yeah.
He challenged us.
He pushed those boundaries
Yeah.
and made us think critically.
Absolutely. And that goes way beyond music.
Way beyond music.
Right.
It's societal.
Yeah.
He reminds us that creativity can be this powerful force for change,
Mhm.
even when it's born out of pain
Out of struggle. Yeah.
and struggle.
So, as we kind of wrap up this exploration of his life
Yeah.
and legacy, are we left with more questions than answers?
I think so.
What?
I don't know if we can definitively say,
Yeah.
was his genius a product of his struggles? Did those struggles cut his life short?
Tragically short.
Tragically short. Yeah, it's complex.
It is complex.
There's no easy answer.
But it is a cautionary tale.
It is.
It reminds us that, even the brightest stars can burn out
Quickly. Too quickly.
way too quickly. And that we need to nurture
And support.
creative individuals.
Yes.
Recognize that sometimes those gifts come with burdens.
Heavy burdens.
Yeah. And maybe that's the lesson that we learned
Perhaps.
from Tupac.
Perhaps.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this deep dive into the complex life and legacy of Tupac Shakur.
Absolutely.
We hope it's given you something to think about,
For sure.
about creativity, about the price of genius, and just that power of art
The power of art.
to move us and to inspire us.